Tonight's home fellowship video is about one of the most discussed passages in all of the writings of the Apostle Paul. And that's in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 11, but we're going to zero in on a little smaller section of that. And to help us tonight, I'm going to go right to a slideshow for you. So let me get my slides going here. Philippians 2, 6 through 8. Who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Now, to justify the New International Version of this passage, I'm going to talk about different phrases that they came up with here. Being in the very nature God, he made himself nothing, and by taking the very nature of his servant. So we're going to get into a little Greek tonight. The first phrase comes from a present active participle, which means continuous action in the background of the main verb. The Greek word we're talking about here is huparkon, and notice the arrow that is continuous in both directions, while being. And this is in the background of the main verb. And in this case, we're talking about while being in very nature God. The next verb we're talking about is in the aorist indicative form, and this means that the action happened in the past. So we've got in the background a blue arrow here with the arrows extending in both directions. It's a very powerful concept. Jesus Christ always was God and always will be God. That is in the background of the action. But then we have this red arrow expressed by the aorist indicative verb and ekenase. And this is what Jesus Christ did at a certain time in the past. He made himself nothing. Notice, he never stopped being God. But while he was God, he made himself nothing. He humbled himself. This is also an aorist indicative verb. It happened in the past. While he was in very nature God, he humbled himself. The blue arrow continues on in both directions. The red arrow begins at a certain time in the past. Notice that in the almost all of our translations, we have some parallelism here. We have in the New International Version, in very nature God, compared to very nature of a servant. So let's consider this in a way that I hope will help you put this together. There are a lot of good reasons why an Army general would need special considerations as compared to a private in the Army. It makes sense. The general's command center would be in a protected place. He'd have a radio or a phone to give him access to whoever he thinks it's necessary to talk to. Access to him, on the other hand, would be limited and guarded. The general should get good food and drink and a comfortable bed. The general's equipment would be maps and photos and intelligence reports, computers, desks, and phones. It doesn't seem like a good use of his knowledge and his talents or his training to give him a shovel and ask him to dig a foxhole or to fill up sandbags. It doesn't seem like his equipment should be a rifle with which he could shoot one person at a time or a grenade. You would give the general a ride on a horse, in a jeep or a car or a helicopter, rather than make him walk. Well, Jesus is, and always has been, the Lord of God's hosts, in command of legions of angels and the army of God. But he seemed to be the scandalous general who did indeed take on the lowliest duties in the army. The king with a basin of water and a towel. The Lord who broke bread for the crowd. The God who walked everywhere he went. And so our Lord never stopped being the general, but he got right into the foxhole with us with a shovel and dug away in order to save our souls. That's what we'll be talking about tonight in Home Fellowship.